Today we're going to be reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, text 23 to 31. And it's January 11th, 2025, the VIHE. Dehastu sarva sanghato jagat tastur iti dvigdva atraira mrigya purusho neti nechetat chwajan. There are two kinds of bodies for every individual soul, a gross body made of 5 gross elements and a subtle body made of 3 subtle elements. Within these bodies, however, is the spirit soul. One must find the soul by analysis, saying, this is not it, this is not it. Thus one must separate spirit from matter. Anvaya vyatirekena vivekeno shanatmana swargastana samanyayar vimshrisadbir asatvarai. Sober and expert persons should search for the spirit soul with minds purified through analytical study in terms of the soul's connection with and distinction from all things that undergo creation, maintenance, and destruction. Buddher jagaranam swapna shushuptir iti vrittayaha tayen ivanubhuyante sodyaksha purusha paraha. Intelligence can be perceived in 3 states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these 3 is to be considered the original master, the ruler, the supreme personality of Godhead. Abistri varnai paryastar buddhi bedi kriyod bhavai swarupam atmano budyed gandharvayum ivanvayat. As one can understand the presence of the air by the aroma it carries, so under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can understand the living soul by these 3 divisions of intelligence. These 3 divisions, however, are not the soul. They are constituted of the 3 modes and are born of activities. Etadwaro hi samsaro guna karma nibandhana agnana mula partopi pumsa swapna ivarpyate. Through polluted intelligence, one is subjugated to the modes of nature, and thus one is conditioned by material existence. Like a dreaming state in which one falsely suffers, material existence, which is due to ignorance, must be considered unwanted and temporary. Tasmat bhavad bi kartavyam karmanam trigunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga pravaho paramo diya. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of the demons, your duty is to take to Krishna consciousness, which can burn the seed of fruit of activities artificially created by the modes of material nature, and stop the flow of intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In other words, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, his ignorance is immediately dissipated. Tatropaya sahasranam ayam bhagavat odita yad ishvare bhagavati yatar yar agjasa ratihi. Of the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life, the one personally explained and accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be considered all perfect. That process is the performance of duties by which love for the Supreme Lord develops. So here we have of processes, upaya, sahasrana, many thousands of process. Bhagavata udita, given by the Supreme Lord. So what one should do, that process of rati, by which rati quickly awakens, the process of love. Guru Shushrushaya Bhaktya Sarva Labdharpanena Cha Sangena Sadhu Bhaktanam Ishwara Radhanena Cha Shradaya Tat Katayam Cha Kirtanayar Guna Karmanam tat padam buruha dhyanyat tal lingeshar dibhi. One must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master, and in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord with faith, glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on the Lord's lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastra and Guru. So the summary of these verses is that Prahlad continues to explain what he learned from Narada, and he explains the nature of the soul and how to realize the soul and God as distinct from gross and subtle matter. One must see what is not spiritual, regard the Lord and the soul as observer. The best way to achieve this state is through bhakti to the Lord, through serving the Guru and associating with sadhus. So our basic questions that we have here, I'm going to get a chutter, sorry. Basic questions here are, how do I find my real spiritual identity? And what is the secret to success in spiritual life? The important themes of this section are to see both the soul and the super soul as an observer. And we asked this question yesterday, and we didn't get very many good answers, I think. So I think we're going to have to go a little bit more deeply into this today. There's also the themes of gross matter, subtle matter, and spiritual energy, the importance of Guru in the last two verses, and the importance of rati, or love for the Supreme Lord, especially in text 29. Okay, so our first section is verses 23 to 24, which is the nature of the soul. So, my dear friends, this is important. And considering how much of a struggle people had with this yesterday, I really want to emphasize this. Instruction given by Prahlad Maharaj to little children. He's telling them from the Kumara age, that's age 1 to 5, little children, who are the children of demons. Okay? So none of us should look at this and say, this is too hard for me, or this is only for advanced devotees. Prahlad Maharaj has said that one should be expert to distinguish the soul from the gross and subtle body by the process of elimination. This is not me, this is not me, this is not me. And this particular behavior should be part of our sadhana in a slightly different form. It's listed by Srila Rupa Goswami as one of the main items of sadhana, where he says not to be unduly affected by joys and sorrows of this world. In order to do that, one has to be practicing this kind of discretion. Now, it is a fact that the jnanis and yogis have, especially the jnanis, but to some extent also, but especially the jnanis, have this as one of their main sadhanas. This is the main thing that they do. However, it's also part of bhakti. Just like the karma yogis, they offer their results of their actions to the Supreme, but so do the bhaktas. It's not that we don't do that. And the yogis, they meditate on the Lord, and we bhaktas also meditate on the Lord. So we shouldn't think that just because this discrimination of what is me and what is not me is primarily done by the jnanis, that it's not also part of bhakti. That's not a fact. It is also part of bhakti. It's given here. It's all over the Bhagavad Gita, and it's all over the Bhagavatam. It's something that Srila Prabhupada talks about, and here Prahlad Maharaj is talking about it. And it's, in one sense, you can say that this happens spontaneously on the higher levels of bhakti, but in another sense, it is also part of the process of bhakti. It's just like part of the process of bhakti is offering food to the Lord with love, and the result of bhakti is you offer food to the Lord with love. So this sadhana is, this is not me, this is not me. And this practice of this is not me is something that we should be actively doing. The thoughts that go through our mind, they're not me, they're the mind. The sensations and urges of the body. Srila Rupa Goswami starts off text 1 of Upadeshamrita, talking about the urges of the body. The urges of the body are not me. I may have to deal with the urges of the body. You know, the body says, okay, I need water and I need to use the toilet. But that's not me. Those pushings of the body are not me. The mind, the thoughts of the mind are not me. The desires of the mind are not me. The emotions of the mind are not me. And it's certainly important to practice that, to be able to distinguish. Some thought goes through my mind. That is not me. That is the mind. So text 24 is we need to be sober and have a purified mind. Then we can distinguish the soul and the super soul from anything that is created, maintained, and destroyed. So everything is the Lord. The Lord says, I'm the light of the sun, I'm the light of the moon, I'm the heat of fire. And yet he is also separate from everything in his own personal form. This is, of course, Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. So in order to be able to make this distinction, these thoughts are not me, these desires, these emotions are not me, we have to have a purified mind. Therefore, we find, like in yoga, there's yam and niyam, that before you can engage in, before even doing pranayam and an asana, what to speak of pratyahara and dharana and dhyana and samadhi, you have to do yam and niyam. You have to have a purified mind. So it will be very difficult if people are eating meat, fish, and eggs, if people are taking intoxicants, if people are having illicit sex, and if people are gambling. It's going to be very difficult for them to do this process. Their body is going to be so much in tamagun, and their mind so much affected in tamagun, that this ability to make this distinction is going to be very difficult. Such a thing is not hard to understand. Just like if somebody is intoxicated, then they have a difficulty distinguishing what is proper and improper behavior. Everybody knows that, right? They may have difficulty distinguishing objects. They may not know what is a proper object, or, their ability to perceive even externally becomes compromised. So what to speak of one's internal understanding? But these things go hand in hand. It's not that, well, first I'm going to be purified and then I can make these distinctions. Making these distinctions is part of the process of purification. So they're very much related to each other. So as I make these distinctions, I become purified, and as I become purified, I can make these distinctions. And part of our process of purification is working at making these distinctions. It's not our only process. We're not just Gyan yogis. But even, of course, the Gyan yogis perform some tapasya. Okay, text 25 to 28 is about destroying the polluted material intelligence by Krishna consciousness. So polluted material intelligence means that I am identifying that when the body has some desire or urges, I think that that's me. I am hungry. I am tired. That's me. When the mind has some emotion, I am angry. I am happy. I am confused. Of course, other languages may do these differently, but this concept that this is me, however we speak about this, that these feelings that pass through the mind are actually me. That's polluted intelligence. So in verse 25, we learn that intelligence has 3 states of activities: wakefulness, jagaranam, dreaming, swapna, and deep sleep, sushupti. And we perceive all of these three states. So the Lord perceives them, the Lord as Paramatma. He is the observer of these states. One who activates the material intelligence is the Paramatma, and one who is endowed with the intelligence is the Jiva, who is beyond the various states of intelligence. So this is, again, wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep are not of the soul. I am the observer. Again, I am not this. Prabhupada talks about this all the time in terms of dreaming, that in dreaming, we imagine ourselves to be someone else or doing something else, but that's not our real state. In your dream, you may be flying. In your dream, you may be chased by a tiger, but actually, none of those things are happening. And similarly, in our waking state, what we're imagining happening in our waking state is not really happening to us. It's another level of polluted intelligence. Okay, in verse 23, when devotional, Prabhupada writes in the purport, when devotional service develops and one's intelligence becomes clear, one can use his intelligence to return home back to Godhead. So this is also the point of using the mind and intelligence, just like we use the body. We use the body in service, we use the mind in service, we use the intelligence in service, and then they actually become spiritualized. Ultimately, the body, the mind, the intelligence are all part of Krishna's energy. Bhumira Panalo Vayukam Mano Buddharevacha. These are all part of Krishna's energy. And when they're connected with Krishna, this is why the bodies of saints are often not cremated, because it's considered that their bodies have become spiritualized. It's certainly interesting that in other traditions, like, say, Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholicism, they have bodies of saints that are just naturally preserved, and they have, just like we have samadhis of great souls, so they have these, of course, they generally bury bodies, but they have, tombs of these saints. And even after hundreds of years, the bodies have not decomposed. With some of these saints, their bodies exude some sort of fragrant liquid that people use for healing diseases. I mean, it's far out. So that actually the body, the mind of the intelligence becomes filled with spiritual energy, probably we'll say like a hot iron rod in the fire. The more we distinguish ourselves from material body and material mind and material intelligence, the more the mind and intelligence and body becomes spiritualized. And Prahlad Maharaj keeps explaining here, looking again, still text 26, Prahlad Maharaj keeps explaining that the Lord and the soul are the observers, different from the various material states. And this concept of the soul as observer is become very, very popular in the modern world. People are turning away from religion in the modern world. Religion is getting a bad reputation, but people still want some form of spirituality. We're humans. Most humans want something above just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And so people are getting very attracted, especially to systems of Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. Both of these are becoming very attractive in the modern world. Unfortunately, the systems of Jnana and yoga that are becoming attractive are mostly impersonal or voidists. So they're very Buddhist influenced in the modern world, and that's really a shame that we Hare Krishna devotees, we personalists, we should be just like Kirtan became done by a bunch of demigod worshippers and so forth, and impersonalists. And we were ISKCON was kind of a late we were kind of a late adopter into how Kirtan became popular in the world. So in the same way, we in Hare Krishna movement, somehow we're missing this boat, how people are becoming very interested in having a sadhana where you see yourself as the observer, either through some sort of analysis that this is not me, or through some sort of meditational process. And I cannot underestimate the popularity of this type of sadhana that's happening in the world. And I cannot overemphasize the fact that this sadhana is part of our system of bhakti, but somehow, although Prabhupada talks about it all the time, although it's in the Shastra all the time, and there for beginners like these sons of the demons, still somehow many of us seem to have kind of missed this, so that we are the observer. And there's a comparison here of aromas and air to the mind and intelligence of the soul, right? And of course, Krishna makes a very similar analogy in the Bhagavad Gita as about detachment, right? So Prahlad Maharaj says, one can understand the presence of air by the aromas it carries. So one can understand the living soul by these three divisions of intelligence. The three divisions are not the soul, right? So just like aromas are different from the material vehicle in which they're carried. So there's aromas that are carried by the air, but the air is not the aromas. Or you can mix aromas with oils, like they call them carrier oils. You know, you'll take some basic oil and then you'll mix some essential oil with it. And the carrier oil is not the aroma. So it's these states of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep are not the soul. Okay, text 27. Material life and identification is compared to a dream whose root is ignorance. My dear friends, material life is compared to a dream all over the Shastra. All over the Shastra. Just this concept that material life is like a dream. And the root is ignorance. The root is ignorance. Srila Prabhupada quotes Madhvacharya, who says it's like seeing one's head cut off in a dream. That material life is like seeing one's head cut off in a dream. And we'll talk about this in a little later. And that we need the mercy of the Lord to be free from this ignorance, that we cannot get out of this ignorance simply by our own endeavor. Now, there are places that Prabhupada says that we can become free from this ignorance just by desiring to do so, but we still need the mercy of the Lord, which generally, most of the time, is going to be following the mercy of a devotee. So when the devotee is merciful to us and we accept that mercy, then the Lord's mercy, it's like the devotee makes a riverbed and the mercy of the Lord is like the water that flows in that riverbed. And if we're thinking about, Prahlad and Kayadu, so in one sense, they were both given the mercy of Narada, but Kayadu was not receptive. She was distracted. She was distracted. And because she was distracted, she wasn't focused. She was grateful for the safety. She was grateful for the safety that Narada gave her, but she was grateful on a material level, and therefore she wasn't able to get that mercy. I think it's something like, if we go to a temple and we're just grateful that there's nice people and that there's nice food to eat and there's nice music to listen to, and we don't really take up the mercy of Srila Prabhupada there. So very important in text 28 that yoga is both the cause and the result of destruction of illusion. And we talked about this, neti as a part of our form of yoga. That again, this lack of identification with the body, mind, and intelligence, it's the result of yoga, but it's also the cause. And yoga will burn the seed of fruitive activities, stop the flow of the intelligence in 3 states, and dissipate the ignorance. So let's think about this. Now, of course, in yoga, we're ultimately talking about there has to be bhakti, and that we'll get to in the next verse. So if we only have the same aspect of bhakti that's there in Gyan, that will not be sufficient. Gyan yoga in and of itself without some touch of bhakti will not be sufficient, and we're interested in performing bhakti that includes some bhaktiized aspects of karma, gyan, and yoga. So to burn the seed of fruitive activities, the seed of fruitive activities is the desire to enjoy separately from the Lord. That's the seed. And when we reconnect with the Lord by making this distinction between ourself and matter, then we burn this seed. We start to see who is the Lord. We start to see the Lord everywhere. We start to become aware of our own position. And once we perceive that, then our desire to be something that we are not, that we never were and cannot be, dissipates. It stops the flow of the intelligence in the three states. Now, this is very interesting. So those who sufficiently separated their sense of self from the subtle body of mind and intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep no longer experiences wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep like a materially conditioned soul. Now, Prabhupada does say that even a pure devotee dreams. In fact, it's interesting that Krishna will often appear to pure devotees in their dream rather than in their waking state. So that's particularly interesting. We have, of course, the Lord appearing to Madhavinda Puri, the Lord appearing to the Pujari, who found the sweet rice and so forth. But one who's in transcendent consciousness always has a sense of existence beyond these three states, does not identify with these three states, and dissipate the ignorance. So yoga allows us to see things as they are. So you can say, if you do yoga, these three things will happen. And you work on those three things as part of yoga. Okay, verses 29 to 31 are activities and results of bhakti, the best of all paths. So Prahlad Maharaj says there's thousands of paths, and of all of them, we want to engage in rati. Prabhupada in the purport to text 29 says, in this verse, the words yar agnyasa ratihi indicate that by offering service and surrendering to the spiritual master, one is elevated to devotional service, and by performing devotional service, one gradually becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of this attachment to the Lord, one can understand the Lord. In other words, one can understand what the Lord's position is, what our position is, and what our relationship is. All of this can be understood very easily by the simple method of bhakti yoga. As soon as one is situated on the platform of bhakti yoga, the root cause of one's suffering and material bondage is destroyed. Of course, here Srila Prabhupada is indirectly referring to many other verses in the Bhagavad Gita and the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So ratihi, the point is rati, the point is love. Srila Rupa Goswami considers the word rati to be synonymous with one of the five bhavas of rasa, or the sthāyi bhav. Sthāyi bhav is what Prabhupada translates in the Nectar Devotion as continuous ecstasy, and it means one's basic identification that I am in neutrality, or I am in servitude, or I am in a friendship, or in parental, or in a conjugal relationship with the Lord. There's these five ratis. And when we actually become aware of our rati, when we develop rati with the Lord, at first, of course, in bhakti, we just have a general mood of attachment. As we have this attachment, then we can understand the Lord. So this detachment from Maya that we've been talking about in these first verses, if that's all there is, it's going to be very difficult for our advancement to be stable. The jnanis and yogis who just focus on, and the karma yogis as well, although their process is different. So the jnanis and yogis who focus just on detachment are going to have a hard time staying on that platform, because we don't just want detachment, we want attachment. All of us want attachment. We tend to get attached to something. Prabhupada says, at least you'll get attached to your dog. Of course, Prabhupada was so surprised when he came, because in India, now you're starting to see it in India a little bit. It's not that common in India at this time. But when Prabhupada was growing up in India, he didn't see people that had dogs as pets and were like walking dogs. And standing around while the dog passed stool and urine. I mean, it was something completely out of his experience. People, of course, had family dogs in the country to help take care of their other animals. You know, there's always been sheep herding dogs and cow herding dogs, and to eat the vermin and to scare away the thieves. So people had dogs. It wasn't that they didn't have dogs, but they didn't take care. They were working animals, just like they had horses and cows as working animals. They weren't having these animals like sleeping on their bed as just their companion. But people get very attached to their dogs. I mean, even it was said in the previous verses, you know, attached to your wife, your children, your paraphernalia, your animals. You know, people will get very attached to their objects. They'll get, people are extremely attached to their cars, for example. Some people, they have some special car and they're always polishing it. You know, we get attached to so many things. We're to live free from attachment. Therefore, Krishna says, Klecho dikatarastesham. There'll be klesha, it'll be difficulty if we only take to the path of detachment. So we simultaneously want to take to the path of attachment. I am not this dreaming wakefulness and deep sleep. I am not this mind. I am not this intelligence. I am not this body. And I am a soul who's not just, I'm a soul, but I'm a soul who has some loving relationship with the Lord. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, in commenting on text 29, says, it is said, Jara yati yasho ya kosham nigirnam analoyata, that bhakti quickly destroys the subtle body, just as the digestive fire consumes food. And he quotes Bhagavatam 3:25-33, Lord Kapila Dev. So this attachment to Krishna, it burns up the identification with the body, mind, and intelligence. So we practice simultaneously material detachment and spiritual attachment. So the main process is spiritual attachment. The main process that Prahlad Maharaj is recommending is spiritual attachment. This rati in text 29. Okay, text 30-31. How do we get this rati? Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, rati arises by services to Guru, such as bathing him and massaging him, by offering him all articles obtained with devotion and not for gaining recognition, by association with devotees who have proper conduct, sadhu bhaktanam. He said, it is not recommended to associate closely with devotees of bad conduct, although they may be served, respected, and seen. So by serving our teachers, our spiritual masters, by serving the sadhus, and if a sadhu, a devotee, they're a devotee, they accept Krishna as God, they're trying to serve Krishna, but they don't behave properly, we might do some service to them, we show respect to them, we can see them, but we don't associate intimately with them. So there are activities of bhakti given here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 activities. Serving a bona fide guru with faith and devotion. That's how the verse begins. Guru Shushrusaya Bhaktya. Offering all our possessions to Guru or Krishna. Sarvala Bharapanena Cha. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have anything. It's not that now, okay, all of you should just pack up all your cash and your computers and your phones that you're using for this class and ship them off to your spiritual master. It means that you use everything in the service of your spiritual master. Okay, the next one is associating with saintly persons and devotees. Sangena sadhu bhaktanam. So sadhu bhaktanam, those who are not just sadhus, but that who are bhaktas, and associating with them, and we just talked about associate with different levels of devotees in different ways. Then worshiping the Supreme Lord. Ishvaradhanena cha. So we should actually worship the Lord. Prema Manjari was talking about yesterday how purifying she finds deity worship. I'm pretty sure that was her. Hearing the glories of the Lord with faith. Shradaya tat katayam cha. So hearing, but hearing with faith, not hearing like Prahlad in the womb, not hearing like Kayadu. Glorifying the Lord's divine qualities and activities. Kirtanar guna karmanam. So Kirtanir, talking about guna karmanam, the Lord's qualities and activities. I was just hearing Prabhupada say this morning, if we love someone, we want to glorify them and we want others to glorify them. So that's both a way to develop love and to show love. Always meditating on the Lord's lotus feet, tat padam burha dhanyat. And remember, serving the Lord's lotus feet, as we remember from the 9 processes of devotion, can mean actually the Lord's feet with his beautiful toenails and tulsi leaves around his feet and his ankle bracelets. It can also mean the holy places, the devotees, tulsi, and so forth. And then finally, worshiping the Lord's deity according to the injunctions of the Shastra and Guru, Taling Eshar Hanan Adibihi. Okay, some interesting points in this section is that the concept of understanding the self with the pure mind, which were the first 2 verses in this section, is also in the Bhagavad Gita 6:20 to 23, which is one of my favorite verses. And then Prabhupada quoting a Madhvacharya in text 27, comparing material illusion to seeing one's head cut off in a dream, is one of the 3 ways, please listen carefully, is one of the 3 ways where the Bhagavatam explains how a pure jiva first becomes contaminated. This is like the big question. I would say it's the only question in our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy where we really don't have a crystal clear answer for a conditioned soul. How did I first get entangled? You know, I can see how I'm entangled now, moment to moment, but how did that process begin? What was the start of it? This question is asked 3 times in the Bhagavatam. One of the answers is given in Bhagavatam 3:7-10. The answer is given is the living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. So this is when we're talking about being detached from the intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. Madhvacharya, quoted by Srila Prabhupada to text 27, reiterates this statement of the Bhagavatam as to how the living entity begins their illusion. And also in text 27, this word agyana mula. Agyana means not knowing. Mula means root. So we can say the root of our material conditioning is an ignorance.
27 chapter. You said 27, but didn't say chapter.
What we're studying right now. This chapter. We're on chapter 7. Yes? Mahalakshmi? Yes? So in text 27, the word agyana mula, which can mean whose root is ignorance. It can mean the root of our illusion is ignorance. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this phrase can also be understood as its root is not understood. Important. You know, people who argue about how the jiva first became conditioned, you can say the beginning of it is ignorance. You can also say the beginning of it cannot be understood, that we have ignorance about its root. Okay, it's time for our break. So again, we take a real break. That means a break from sitting and a break from looking at a screen. So please stop looking at screens and stop sitting for the next 12, 13 minutes. Thank you. Krishna. So I see some questions in the chat that it seems that wakefulness is the natural state of the soul. Nope. Our so-called wakefulness is also a dream state. That's stated throughout the Shastra. What we consider to be material wakefulness is also a kind of dream. The 11th canto, it says wakefulness is in sattva and dreaming is in rajas and deep sleep is in tamas. But we are above sattva. Throughout the Bhagavatam, it discusses the natural consciousness of the soul as what's called turiya, or a 4th dimension of consciousness, where we also see our waking life as illusion and that we don't identify with it. Sham Kishore Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, is it possible to explain these 3 states, like, sleeping, like wakefulness, dreaming, and like, deep sleep, like from a subtle body perspective, like what mind is on, off, intelligence on, off, like if in the mind, intelligence, false ego, like, what happens in these three states. And like I was once even listening to one lecture of my Guru Maharaj, where he even said that when we sleep, uh, like the soul goes off for a walk, like in a deep sleep sometimes. Like, the body is there, but the soul goes off for the walk. And that's why many times when we wake up, sometimes we wake up with a jerk. And that's like, the soul coming in the body. And sometimes some of the spirits come in and stuff like that. So I'm very fascinated about these three states. Like, what happens to the subtle body? Like, what exactly is the difference between these three states? So if you could explain, that would be very nice.
Srila Prabhupada generally talks about dreaming as the subtle body actually leaving the gross body. That the subtle body is going off in another realm. And that it's still like there's some connecting with the body. I mean, there are persons who can do that intentionally. There are persons who can do, what do they call it? Astral travel. They can intentionally go into a trance and they leave their gross body and they can travel around in their subtle body and then return to the gross body. Ghosts are stuck without a gross body to go back to. We have Sankaracharya could do this, and he could also enter other bodies. There's this story that Prabhupada tells in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how he left his body in the care of a disciple, and he, in his subtle body, he entered the body of a dying king and lived like a king for a month. So what would we say is the situation of the mind, intelligence, and false ego during these three states? Well, during the state of wakefulness, the intelligence is planning, has some vision. This is what I want to accomplish. And then in regard to that vision, the mind is accepting and rejecting. The mind is very, very active in the waking state, constantly accepting and rejecting, and constantly getting input from the senses. Taking what am I seeing, what am I smelling, what am I touching, what am I tasting, and then accepting and rejecting these. Oh, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that this sensation is a good sensation, this sensation is a bad sensation, according to the direction of the intelligence, or if one is very animalistic, just according to the immediate sensation that comes in. And of course, the false ego is very active with I am the enjoyer, I am the enjoyer, I am the enjoyer. So in the state of dreaming, the mind is categorizing and cleaning. So the mind is no longer dealing with external sense objects. In the state of dreaming, you're not hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling what's in your environment, but you're categorizing and cleaning. It's like, you're cooking and then you're cleaning up afterwards. You're washing the pots, you're putting the ingredients back where they go, you're cleaning the counter, you're then drying the dishes and putting them away. You're not actively working, you're cleaning up, you're organizing. Or in our home, we organize our stuff. If you don't periodically organize your stuff in your home and clean your home, that you're not going to be able to work properly. So the mind is sorting and organizing, and again, according to the dictation of the intelligence, but without contact with the external sense objects. In deep sleep, the mind is off. The mind is off. The mind acts like guards, accepting, rejecting. You can think of them as they're like guards. All right, this comes in, this doesn't come in. This comes in, this doesn't come in. This comes in, this doesn't come in. In deep sleep, the guards are sleeping. They're not there. Deep sleep is also similar to a yogic state of pratyahara, where you turn off the mind and you are unaware of external sense objects, and you can just stay on the platform of intelligence. Deep states of hypnosis are also like that. Because the accepting and rejecting of the mind is turned off, a person becomes very suggestible. Anything like gets through the gates. But in deep sleep, the intelligence is also resting. And even the false ego it's like it's there, but it's kind of sluggish. So that would be the situation of the subtle body in those three states. Yes, I can do that, Ekanta, but if I have time, I will do that. Do we distinguish between the feelings of the mind and the feelings of the soul? That's the whole idea, Mahalakshmi. Yes. That's the whole idea of these verses today. Withdraw from the feelings of the mind and attach to the feelings of the soul. That is what Prahlad Maharaj is saying. The first few verses are, I'm not the feelings of the mind. The last verses are, I am the feelings of the soul. And the last verses is what distinguishes bhakti yogis from the jnana yogis and to some extent the Dhyan yogis. The real Dhyan yogis also have some attachment for Paramatma.
Mataji, does soul also have feelings?
Well, how could you have rati for the Lord if you didn't have feelings?
Okay.
I would
So,
humbly suggest that I taught at the VIHE the entire Nectar Devotion, the entire Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I
Yeah.
think in July, maybe, I may be teaching again. They're asking me if I can teach the Southern Ocean again. But I would humbly suggest, I mean, I know it's long because each of the classes are 2 hours like this, and it is long. And we do go into a lot of depth. I recognize that it is a commitment, but I have this up on my YouTube channel, Urmila Devi Dasi YouTube channel, under Nectar Devotion. I have all my classes on the full Nectar Devotion, the full Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And there, Srila Rupa Goswami explains in great depth the emotions of the soul. So he explains, your basic Saibhav is your most basic, what Prabhupada calls continuous ecstasy. Then you have your secondary Saibhavs, and then you have your 33 Vyavichari bhavs. So 33 plus 12. So those are the various emotions of the soul, and then there's various ways in which they combine when Srila Rupa Goswami is discussing the Vyabhichari or the Sanchari bhavs, which are the emotions, the feelings of the soul. He describes how they come together. I mean, it's interesting because we saw previously Hiranyakashipu, who went from affection to Prahlad, to anger, right, to fear, to moroseness, that his feelings had this movement. And Srila Rupa Goswami explains this kind of movement in the spiritual feelings of the soul also. How one emotion leads to another, how emotions can combine, how one emotion can come, another one stays, another one goes. So I would strongly suggest that you can see my classes on that. And look at Prasant just gave a link in the chat. Woohoo! So if you go to the chat and you go to that link. Okay, why is the state of wakefulness considered in the mode of goodness when the mind and intelligence which are polluted are fully active? It's interesting, Sitarani, because that's the way it's described in the 11th canto, that wakefulness is in sattva, dreaming in rajas, and deep sleep in tamas. But it has certainly fascinated me for a long time that the Lord will often appear to great devotees not in wakefulness but in dreaming. That he'll come in a dream. And in dreams, everything is quieter. The mind, intelligence, and false ego are all quieter. And so it's actually easier for him to be perceived in dream. And yet we can say that a dream is on a lower level in terms of consciousness than wakefulness. So that has fascinated me. What also fascinates me is that I don't have answers for this. I'm just throwing this out as interesting stuff that I don't have answers to. No, Mahalakshmi. No. The other thing that fascinates me is that deep sleep, Sushupti, is very much like the Pratyadhara of yoga. where you have no awareness of sense objects at all, and the mind is completely still. So that also fascinates me because the stillness of the mind is considered in Sattva Gun. So when the mind is completely still, that's its natural state. What's also fascinating is that the mind is a product of goodness and the intelligence is a product of passion. And these are things that not only myself, I'm in a Google group of ISKCON scholars and academics, and we have been discussing for the last, I don't know, month about deep sleep and the relationship of the soul and consciousness to deep sleep and to like surgical anesthesia. So I'll just simply tell you that these things fascinate me and I explore them and I like to think about them and so forth. And no, Mahalakshmi, those verses are not the verses at all. No. No, we were talking when I'm saying in my class teaching these verses from this, if I just say in verse 26 or verse 27, what I'm hoping everybody can understand is since we're doing verses 23 to, what was it? 23 to 31, that if I mention any verse number 23 to 31, that you'll all know that it's in the chapter that we are reading at present. If I refer to something outside the chapter, then I'll refer to the canto, chapter, and verse number. Okay, if we remember dreams very rarely, it's interesting, we tend to remember them more when we're children. Does it mean we are not experiencing dreams and straight away going into deep sleep? No, we have to dream. If you don't dream, you'll become actually psychotic. You have to dream. And this not remembering, this discussion I'm having with these scholars, I mean, I'm part of the discussion, but it was initiated by somebody else, and it's really other people's discussion that I am somewhat participating in. Some of them are making the point that deep sleep, we don't remember anything. Therefore, how we lost consciousness. Is the soul ever not conscious? And so we're arguing whether or not the soul can ever be not conscious, or if consciousness is an integral part of the soul that always has to be there. And the example given in the Shastra is we are conscious in deep sleep. That's why when we wake up, we say, I slept happily. We have some sense of our existing. And we often don't remember what happens in waking life. Yes, Mahalakshmi, I know what your question is, and it's the same question as Ekanta, and I'll get to it if I can. And I already told Ekanta that. I already said I'll get to it if I can. I don't know if I'll have time. Okay. I don't remember a lot of my waking life, honestly. Right? Does everybody here remember everything of their waking life? No. We don't. If I said to you, what were you doing last year at this time? And don't look at any journals. Don't look at your calendar. Don't use any aids to remembering. I'd really have to think about it. And I would probably get vague. I probably wouldn't get this day at this time. Even if I looked at my calendar and my journals, I might get it wrong. Okay, Shiradagovan, you wrote me a private message. Did you expect that to be private?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was enough time, so I just thought I'll just write to you.
Okay, but yeah. I don't even remember what I ate for lunch 2 days ago. Yeah, right, exactly. I have to really think about it. I have to really think about it. What did I eat for breakfast 2 days ago? What did I eat for lunch 2 days ago? And sometimes I can't even remember. I mean, it's funny with me. I basically have saris that all look pretty much the same except for the color of the border. And I'm usually unaware of what sari I'm wearing. If you ask me, what sari are you wearing today? I have to look. So that doesn't mean that I'm unconscious. We're just speaking of forgetting dreams. Yeah, so I like that point. Maybe I'll bring it up in the scholars group. Okay, so our questions here, how do I find my real spiritual identity and what's the secret to success? So our answers are, with sober and purified mind, One should see oneself as the observer and distinguish between spirit, gross, and subtle matter. And the best and easiest way to achieve this is by the process of bhakti, through which we develop rati for the Lord, learn from a guru who we must serve in the association of devotees with good character. So I don't think I mentioned the themes. I don't remember if I did or not. That the soul and super soul are the observer. Oh yeah, I did mention them. Okay. All right. So let me go to the questions I wanted to ask all of you. So first question, this is simple, folks, and I'd like you to try to answer this without looking. What process, you can answer it in one Sanskrit word. What process does Prahlad Maharaj and the Lord himself recommend to free us from material existence? In text 29. What's the process? One word. See if you can do it without looking. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Ekanta. Okay, I'm also testing myself as a teacher here. Like, how well did I teach? Mahalakshmi, you're going to the next verse. You're going to 30 and 31. In 29, Prahlad says, this is what's recommended by the Lord. Okay, are you guys getting Sharanagati from 29? Just going to look if I've... Yeah, no Sharanagati there. Where are you guys getting surrender from? Attachment, yeah. Yes, attachment. And no surrender here, folks.
Prabhupada uses the 1866 to explain it.
Yeah, but I
In
just
the
asked for I was just asking for the verse. Okay, so in the verse, it's saying to get out of many thousands of processes, what's recommended by the Lord, but which acts quickly, is rati, is attachment. So if we're just looking, what does Prahlad Maharaj say is recommended by the Lord? Is rati or attachment. Now, that's obviously connected with surrender, and therefore Srila Prabhupada connects this with 1866. But if you're going to look directly at the verse itself, all right. Oh, goodness, I wrote that just to Radha Govinda because I was set like that. Oh, Krishna. There we go. Okay, here it is. Sorry. Here's 29, the Sanskrit. And then you see, let's look at the Sanskrit. Tatra and that connection, the connection Prahlad Maharaj was talking about, learning that you're the observer. Upaya, Sahasranam, many thousands of processes. I am this, Bhagavata Udita, that Krishna recommends. Yat, which, Ishvare, the Lord, Bhagavati, the Supreme Personality Godhead, Ishvare Bhagavati, Yata, as much as Yai, by which, Agnyasa, quickly, Ratihi, attachment with love and devotion. So the process recommended by the Lord and the process recommended by Prahlad is attachment. Bhakti yoga as an answer could work, but we really want to get, this is the kind of the root of bhakti yoga. So the answer we're really looking for here is rati, to have attachment to the Lord. Because Prahlad Maharaj was talking about up to this point, detachment. The best way to develop detachment is to also develop attachment. All right. So let's see if anybody listened to what I just said. Why does the Lord and Prahlad specifically recommend this process of attachment? If everybody could please answer this. Why? Very, very simple. Why do they specifically recommend this process of attachment to the Lord? I like the way you put it, Prasant. Of course, it's not muscle literally, but yes. Excellent, Radhika. Excellent, Sitarani. Ah, Shakti Manta, excellent. Asit, very nice. Aja, you're just, this answer doesn't mean anything. Why are they recommending it? Because it's good. If you ask me, you're shopping online for something and you say, why do you recommend that phone? And I say, because it's the best one. That doesn't give you any useful information at all. Sorry. Any of you who've been to my classes before, you know that I can be like right in your face sometimes, and I hope you can take it. Advaita Krishna Prabhu, actually, in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada makes the point, although Krishna says, Klesha dikatarashtesam avyakta shakti tejasam avyaktir higatir dukam deha vadbir avapyate, that this is very difficult for someone who's in the body. Prabhupada then comments that it's not just the conditioned state, it's the state of the soul. Excellent, Shri Radha Govinda. Well, Murari, I mean, okay. Okay, it's fair. It's okay, but it's not really telling me why. Mahalakshmi, excellent, yes. Excellent, okay. Rangadevi, yes. Okay. Yes, Pulastamuni, that is also stated, one can understand the Lord. So, all wonderful, wonderful answers there. Thank you very much. All right. So in 27, there's, and when I say 27, Mahalakshmi, I mean verse 27 of this chapter that we are studying. Yeah, right. There you go. I can understand that it's sometimes confusing because sometimes I also refer to other places, so it can be confusing. I get that. So in 27 of this chapter that we are studying, Prahlad Maharaj talks about polluted intelligence. Polluted intelligence. Anyone have any idea of what that means? Yes, Prema Manjari, what do you think polluted intelligence means?
Polluted intelligence means basically materialistic intelligence, which has the concept of the real happiness is finding happiness in this material world through sense gratification.
Excellent, excellent. So we have good desires here and good answers here, good answers here in the chat also. But I think, Prem Manjari, you just hit it on the head, that polluted intelligence is I will find happiness by enjoying my senses and mind. That's going to be the source of my happiness. I'm going to find happiness separately from Krishna. I'm going to find happiness by taking the material energy and enjoying it myself separately from Krishna. That's polluted intelligence, because then that directs the mind what to accept and what to reject based on that. And that's rooted in the false ego. I am the enjoyer. That creates a polluted intelligence that the way I will be happy is to separate myself from Krishna. Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I've had forever and that I don't have an answer to. So I'd love to hear from all of you how you would answer this question, because I have no idea how to answer it. So I put it in the chat that Srila Prabhupada often says, we say my head, not I head. So we can say the head is not me because it's my head. But you know what? I also say myself. I say myself all the time. Any thoughts on that? Again, I don't have an answer for this, so I'm curious as to what you all think about this.
Maharaj, depending on our level, we could be referring to mind or intelligence. When I say myself, because if the thought is coming at the mental level, mental platform, then when I'm saying myself, is the mind I'm referring to.
Okay.
And rarely, unless I am talking, I'm rarely into Krishna consciousness and desiring to serve Krishna, that's when the myself would come from the soul, would refer to the soul.
Right, but the term myself implies that there is the owner and the object. So it sounds like the self is different from me. And Prabhupada's saying that, and that's how you can tell you're not the body, because you're saying the finger is different from you. You're the owner of the finger is your possession. That you say my finger, my head. But I also say myself. And when I say myself, I could be referring to myself as I am the owner of the body as self. I could refer to I am the owner as the mind as self, because Atma can refer to any of those. But I can also refer to me, my existence, as not just me and I, but I can also refer to me and I, the soul, as if I owned myself. So that would be my argument. You know, if someone were to present this argument to me that how I can tell I'm not the body or I'm not the mind, then I'd say, well, I'm having a problem with this argument because I can also say myself. And again, I don't know the I don't know the answer to this.
Or maybe it's a language issue. This word.
Hmm.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes.
Can I read something? This morning I was discussing third canto. Prabhupada explains about this consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Adhyatmika or self-identification with the body and mind, Adibhautika or self-identification with the material products, and Adidevika, self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the three, he says, Adidevika self-identification is a beginning of purity of consciousness in the persons of the desire of the Lord, which means that the self, the Atma Shakti, is more than just the consciousness of the soul. It is also the combined, contaminated consciousness coming from the mind, the ego, and the intelligence. So we identify the self is different to the soul. That's what Prabhupada is saying here. So therefore we say, when we say myself, it means me, my mind, my senses, and everything. Because we are inherently identifying with Adhyatmika and Bhautika. That's what I understood. This morning we had a long discussion on this and just thought.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, and they can't just pointing out sometimes people say my soul. So that definitely is the case. Okay, I had a number of you asked me about the process of detachment, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but as some of you asked me again today, I'll talk about it again today, and then I'm going to call on some of you randomly and ask you what I said. So can we be like Prahlad and not Kayadu here? Especially some of you who are just black rectangles. Yes. So there's some sensation that happens in our body. And let's take a sensation that happens in our body that we would say is uncomfortable. One can say, this is not me. This is simply a sensation that's happening in the body. I am the soul, and I am not affected by any sensations that happen within my body. I may need to make some adjustment. So if I have a sensation that, my foot is falling asleep, I may have to make some adjustment and move my foot. But I don't identify with the foot, and I don't think it's me, and I don't feel that I'm in any danger. I still have a sense that I am safe. With the mind, I was just reading in Krishna book this morning about Bhrigu Muni testing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and how the way he tested them was by progressively greater insults. And I was really struck by the fact that Lord Vishnu, not only did he not feel insulted, but he felt that he had offended Bhrigu Muni by not standing up to receive him. He felt he was blessed by Bhrigu's foot kicking his chest. He said, now that you've kicked my chest, it's a fit place for Lakshmi to live because a Brahman's foot has touched it. He called Bhrigu Prabhu, which Prabhupada translates as father. And that was also interesting. And I was kind of hearkening back to the discussion we had about Hiranyakashipu saying Prahlad was a friend disguised as an enemy, and how the Lord, if there's a friend disguised as an enemy, takes the disguise as valuable. That was very similar, that he took Bhrigu Muni's kicking him as valuable rather than as insulting. And the Lord's behavior was evidence of the fact that he is situated in pure goodness without any passion or ignorance. That he's not threatened by anything. Nobody can threaten him. You know, we react badly to insults because we take it as some kind of a threat. And our brain is wired to interpret insults as a threat because, as I said the other day, we're herd animals. We're social creatures. So insults are actually threatening to our survival. But if we're, and at least in Sattva-gun, we're not identifying with the body and mind. So although the body may have some initial chemical reaction to insults, very similar to how our body would have a chemical reaction to a pack of barking dogs, we can say, this is not me. My survival, my actual survival does not depend on my social situation. I am a soul. Just like the Lord doesn't feel that, you know, he doesn't need the respect of Bhrigu Muni in order to be happy. He's always situated in his own happiness, and so are we as the soul. So to be able to respond like this, I mean, a very simple example that I give all the time is how we respond to food when we're fasting. You know, decades ago, I mean, it must have been like 48 years ago. I remember it was a fast day and I went grocery shopping because I wanted to cook for the feast, but I shopped on the day of the festival. So I was out shopping when I was fasting. And I remember feeling some fleeting attraction to the cakes and cookies, which reminds me of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur saying that we don't think about spiritual life. All we think about is, do I have enough cakes? So anyway, so I remember being in the grocery store and thinking, you know, since joining the movement, I mean, I'd only been in the movement maybe 3 years at that time, but I thought, you know, since joining the movement, I never felt any attraction to mundane cakes at all, like zero. Why was there this feeling in the mind of, I want that? Where did that come from? And I thought, well, it came from the fact that I'm fasting. And so my brain is like, I don't have enough glucose. I can't work properly. I don't have enough glucose. Look, there's some sugar. That'll do it. Get that for me. And I was able, even very new in Krishna consciousness, to look at that situation and say, this is not me. This is just something biological this is something built into the body. It's not me. I don't need to repress this desire. I don't need to indulge the desire. I don't need to think about it at all. I can just observe it. Oh, my body's fasting, and therefore my brain is looking for something to eat. How interesting is that? And that's it, just to observe it. And that's what's done. You know, the thoughts, I need to do this, and what about this, and I have to do this, and there's this. Oh, look at me, there's thoughts. So to observe it. And then, because we want engagement and we want attachment, to turn our consciousness to the spiritual. So not just to be detached, but to turn our consciousness to the spiritual. Okay, this is another question I have for you, and we talked about this earlier, that if one understands Krishna, one understands everything. Oh yeah, I said I would call on people and ask them. Okay, so let's see, who should I call on? Sham Kishore Prabhu. So how do we be detached from the body and mind, the desires and the feelings and the thoughts of the body and mind? How do we do Prahlad Maharaj's instructions at the beginning of this section?
Again, I think, Mataji, if we take a bit of a pause, like it happens, like sometimes when somebody says something and we feel angry, so it's not that a feeling or a sensation doesn't come, immediately the reflex reaction might be, to respond. But if we are able to pause for some while and then say, accept it, okay, fine, I am feeling anger, this anger is coming, I am getting some, some feelings are coming, but are the feelings of my body or of my mind, not of my soul. And so practically, if we can sometimes just delay our response, then our better senses, what we have learned, like, from the Shastras or because sometimes it doesn't come to us spontaneously. Because if it comes to us spontaneously that way, then of course we have become very advanced souls. But if till the time we are not that advanced souls, feeling it, maybe getting even whatever, in some ways agitated, but still we understand that this agitation is not the agitation of my soul. This is the agitation of my body or of my mind. So
Excellent.
that is like a practical way to handle it.
Absolutely excellent. And even for very advanced souls, even very advanced souls, they may be able to do it faster, but it's the same thing. So such is described with Jed Bharat at the end of the King Rahugana story, is described with Vidura when he was insulted by Duryodhana. It's explained by Krishna to Uddhava. So there is going to be some unsettling in the body and mind. And yes, this pause, this space, take the space, stop, observe, stop, observe. And observe, I would humbly suggest one observes with curiosity and that one observes with admiration for Krishna's energy. That, oh, look at the energy of the Lord. This is how Vidura, what Vidura did. He stopped and went, oh, this is the energy of the Lord. This is Mahamaya for Duryodhana, and for me, it's Yogamaya helping me to come closer to Krishna. He felt it. He felt it severely, actually, which is fascinating because he always knew that Duryodhana was like that. I mean, it wasn't like a surprise. So he felt it. Step back, become the observer, and the appreciator. This is the Lord's energy, how wonderfully the Lord's energy is working. So another question for all of you. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that we can show respect, we can even do service, we can see them, but we shouldn't intimately associate with devotees who are not of proper character. So how do we show respect and how do we have service and respect without associating with devotees of bad character? Any thoughts? Wishing them well, Sitaram. Yes, nice to know you're here. I never know if somebody turns off their video, if they're actually there. We don't criticize. Okay. Amanina, manadena. Not taking their example. Very nice. Serving prasadam, invite them for kirtans. Very nice. Associating means exchanging thoughts, which is something we can avoid. Okay, I like that, Aja. That's very thoughtful. Try to understand their situation and not judge them. Let Krishna judge them. We don't reveal our hearts. Yes, Ilamani, very similar. We don't take their behavior personally. I like that, Ratnam Prabhu. That this person is struggling, they're having some problem. I don't have to take it personally. Appreciating what they're doing right, which we're sure that would be as the broken clock is right 2 times a day. Also, if there's some kind of devotee, they're doing something right. A devotee who has bad character, if they're defined as a devotee who has bad character, there's something that they're doing right. And appreciate what they're doing right. Still physically offer respect, okay, but not engage in revealing the mind. Still belong to Prabhupada. Keep them in mind. No intimate dealings. Offering respect in the mind, so we said physically, or praying for them to see what can be adjusted. Bad character can also be temporary. Yes, hopefully it is. Hopefully it is, but excellent. So, if somebody comes to the temple and they chant Hare Krishna, but they're also, taking drugs, we don't have to go take drugs with them. Right? But we can still give them prasadam. We can still say Haribo. You don't need to use bold, Radhika. Okay, Rupa Goswami says, mentally honor the devotee. Offer obeisances to the devotee who's worshiping the deity. Yes, understood, Radhika. But here in this purport, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is saying that we can offer respects and do service for devotees of bad character. So it's not just mental respect. It's not just, okay, well, it's nice that this guy's coming to the temple to see the Lord, but it's talking about doing some service. So I can certainly give them some prasadam, and I can give them a mat to sit on, right? Also giving the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes I may be doing this bad character for a deeper reason. Yes, trying to understand. No, it doesn't mean to try to excuse people. Give them a room to rectify. Sounds like we have a room in the temple, a rectification room. Okay, you dope smoking visitor, we have a rectification room over there in the other building. Yeah, I understood what you meant. It just sounded funny. In other words, give them some time and some space to rectify. Now, sometimes people of bad character, their character is so bad that you have to rip the detention room, like in a school. Never make them feel that they're beyond redemption. Pulastamuni, I think that's so important. No one is ever beyond redemption. When Vibhishan surrenders to Ram, and even Lakshman is saying, "You sure you want to accept him?" And Ram says, "Even if Ravana were to come to me and surrender, that I would accept him." That no one is beyond redemption. That Mahaprabhu accepted Madhai. No one is beyond redemption. Migrari was accepted by Narada Muni. No one is beyond redemption. And even if someone, after being a devotee, engages in terrible activities, there still can be redeemed. Of course, sometimes the bad conduct may be so bad that you have to report them to the police and they need to be put in jail. That's something else. So thank Krishna. It's a reminder we should not judge. The fact that we can see and get angered by their bad behavior may mean that a trace of that bad behavior is in us. Yes. They may be fighting with their anarthas. I mean, another thing that I like to remind people of is all of us are struggling with something. Yes, we're all struggling with something. It may be very minor. It may be very major. And someone else's struggles may not be my struggles. What I'm struggling with, somebody else may not be struggling with. And what comes very easily to me may be someone else's struggles. I've met one I've met and one I know their family member, initiated devotees who struggle with a gambling addiction. So one I met personally and he told me about his struggle, and the other I know the person's relative who told me, my relative has this gambling addiction, even though they were initiated, they keep struggling with gambling. And gambling is not something I have ever done. I mean, I'm sure as a child, I once bought a raffle ticket or something, but I've just simply never gambled, never had any interest in it and never done it. And so to me, it's like it may just seem like, what is this? How does this person, but that's their struggle. Just because it's not my struggle, doesn't mean that I should think that I'm a superior being. Because, I struggle with something that maybe for that person is easy. So that's what it is. Okay, we had the question asked about the verses in the Bhagavatam. There's 3 verses where the initial conditioning of the jiva is asked, which very much relates to what we're studying today. So one of them is in Bhagavatam 3.7.5. The question is asked. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. Oops. That bigger, it's jumping off the screen. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Okay, the answer is given in 3.7.10. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. So this same point was quoted by Madhvacharya and quoted by Srila Prabhupada in the verses we read today. Can't remember the number. I think it was verse 27. Okay, and the rest of this answer is in the next verse, 3.7.11. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of water, so the self associated with matter appears to have the qualities of matter. Okay, so this question is also asked in 2.8.7. O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Will you kindly explain this, for it is known to you? So this is also about the initial, how does it start? The answer given in 2.9.1 is, Srila Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. So the answers we've gotten so far, it's like seeing your head cut off in a dream. It's like thinking the reflection of the moon that's moving is the moon moving. And this is due to the Lord's energy, and it's like a dream. Okay, the last place where this question is asked is in 11.10.35 through 37. Where Uddhava says, O my Lord, a living entity situated within the material body is surrounded by the modes of nature and the happiness and distress that are born of activities caused by these modes. How is it possible that he is not bound by this material encirclement? It may also be said that the living entity is ultimately transcendental and has nothing to do with the material world. Then how is he ever bound by material nature? O my Lord, Achyuta, the same living entity is sometimes described as eternally conditioned and at other times as eternally liberated. I am not able to understand, therefore, the actual situation of the living entity. You, my Lord, are the best of those who are expert in answering philosophical questions. Please explain to me the symptoms by which one can tell the difference between a living entity who is eternally liberated and one who is eternally conditioned. In what various ways would they remain situated, enjoy life, eat, evacuate, lie down, sit, or move about? So Krishna gives the answer in 3 verses, 11, 1 to 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, due to the influence of the material modes of nature, which are under my control, the living entity is sometimes designated as conditioned and sometimes as liberated. In fact, however, the soul is never really bound up or liberated. And since I am the Supreme Lord of Maya, which is the cause of the modes of nature, I also am never to be considered liberated or in bondage. Just as a dream is merely a creation of one's intelligence but has no actual substance, similarly, material lamentation, illusion, happiness, distress, and the acceptance of the material body under the influence of Maya are all creations of my illusory energy. In other words, material existence has no essential reality. O Uddhava, both knowledge and ignorance, being products of Maya, are expansion of my potency. Both knowledge and ignorance are beginningless and perpetually award liberation and bondage to embodied living beings. So the only places in the Bhagavatam where this question is directly raised, how does the pure soul ever become illusioned? How does the pure soul become conditioned? Are those places. And the way it's answered in each case is it's like a dream. It's an enemy of illusion of the Lord, and it's like a dream. That's the only answer that's given. There is no story. There's no narrative. The soul was in this geographical place doing this thing at this time, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened. There's no narrative like that. There just isn't. And my humble request to all of you is please let go of the narratives. Just let them go. Stop fighting over them. Once we are out of illusion, we will very clearly understand how it is that we ever got into illusion. And as long as we're in illusion, we're not going to understand. And therefore, this answer is given metaphorically. In all three cases, it's given in metaphors, and there's no narration, there's no story, there's no fable, there's nothing given like that. Whenever there's a direct answer. Now, you can take a lot of other verses in the Shastra and say, well, indirectly, this answers the question. But as far as a direct question and a direct answer, and most of our acharyas don't deal with this question at all. Okay, I think that was, see if I had anything else I really wanted to do. Okay, let me just ask this one in the last 3 minutes that we have. So 29, where, I don't know, Mahalakshmi, you'd have to have been paying attention. I don't have it memorized. So that's why I had a screen share, so you could write it down as you were seeing it on screen. So in verse 29, again, where Prahlad Maharaj says the real answer is Rati, and this reveals our relationship with the Lord and destroys the root cause of our suffering. How does it do that? Any thoughts?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The Lord, the soul only has a relationship with the Supreme Lord. And Shraddha means is to revive that relationship. And the other, like we just discussed, everything else is just suspended in silly air called dream. So that's why once we develop the rati to the Lord, it actually starts to come. We start to come to the reality of our existence.
Thank you. Anyone else have any insight on this? Oh, Sitarani, very nicely put. And Shakti Manta, okay. It cleans the mirror of the mind. It's a cleaning process. Still not sure how, but from that one. Sri Radha Govinda, very nice. Narada Rishi, excellent. Yes, Mahalakshmi, exactly correct. That is exactly correct. The attachment to the Lord starts, when you have a general attachment, it starts becoming specific. Look, this is true even in our material relationships. If I have a general attachment to somebody and I start thinking about that and acting on it, my relationship with them gets some specificity, correct? Yes? I can start off with some general attachment. Oh, this is a really nice person I want to hang out with. And as I do that, there's something specific about it. I want to hang out with them. How? Doing what? With what mood? And with the Lord, that awakens my original mood and gets rid of this binding attachment of I want to enjoy separately from the Lord, because now I want to enjoy, as Prabhupada would say, through the Lord. With the Lord. All right. Any mistakes here, please ignore. Anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada and Prahlad Maharaj and Narad Muni, and certainly not from me. So we have no class tomorrow on Sunday, and Krishna willing, I will see you all on Monday. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.